Good morning. I'm Laurel.
And I'm Hayes.
I want to welcome you to this morning's edition of the Laurel and Hayes Show. And we are really happy to introduce you to Marshall William, one of our partners here at the Ad Results. And we're so glad that you're here today. Good morning.
Great. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me on your program.
Glad you're here. And one of the things that we were going to talk about this morning, Marshall, and as you know, if you've been following any of these short little video logs that we're doing, is that we've been sort of talking about things that have come up in the industry. We've sort of had some things early on, and we've sort of been moving along. One of the large questions I think that's been looming, and something that Marshall's done a lot of thinking about, is where our industry is going. You know, we're in the radio industry primarily. We're in the talent industry with endorsement radio, local and national, and kind of wanted to talk to Marshall this morning about that question.
Yeah, and his role as lead prognosticator to kind of tell us what to expect down the road.
Well, I don't know about that. I think the future is yet to be determined. I think everybody understands that. The consumer ultimately is going to dictate where we go. But I do have some thoughts on kind of what our next steps are. You know, we, as you mentioned, Laurel, we are in the broadcast industry, but we're kind of a one step away from that universe. Away from it's not the right term I'm looking for, but we are a connecting resource between on-air personalities in the terrestrial radio space, and I use the word terrestrial to mean AM and FM because that's the conventional term for it. We are a connecting resource for taking a product or service and connecting it with that on-air personality and then having that personality talk about it in a live fashion. That's what Ad Results is built on.
Right.
You guys obviously know that, but for anybody out there watching, that's what the very nature of the Ad Results business model is all about. Well, right now, that is defined as mostly terrestrial radio, as mentioned, AM and FM, and the radio personalities that exist there. But we've got this new fantastic device called the Internet. Mm-hmm. And you can get whatever you want on the Internet in terms of content. It's not dictated by the AM and FM bands anymore and the 50 stations you might get in a major market and the 10 or 12 stations you might get in a smaller market. And so the Internet has really been the biggest game changer since the broadcast universe started. And I'm talking about broadcast means in terms of the audio component of it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking here because I'm hearing two things: the device or the technology, which is the Internet. Then I'm hearing content, you know. And I think that we're watching the industry change a lot in the first one, in the in technology and in the devices and how people get their
the
their
delivery
audio now.
system is
delivery.
What's changed.
What we're I think needs to either catch up or find its way is also content. And how does that then parlay into that? I mean, is that, and I think that as a company, we've worked a lot with podcasting. I think that's one of the next natural places. Satellite was one too, but I'm kind of afraid that satellite might be going a little bit like MTV. It was all the great new thing, but was it able to really able to replace radio?
Right. Well, it's funny because I think satellite is just an extension of terrestrial radio. Mm-hmm. It's just another way to get the same kind of content. The great thing about the Internet is you can deliver whatever content you want.
Right.
And that the space there is only going to get bigger. No, you mentioned podcasting. Podcasting is broadcast offshore out of a garage or that kind of thing, and they would play whatever they wanted to, and they might use language that wasn't suitable for FCC airwaves and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't do that over an AM and FM band because the FCC had domain over that, like I mentioned. But they don't over the Internet.
Sure.
And so you get all these, I hesitate to call them pirate broadcasters, but essentially...
Adam Carolla calls his the pirate ship. Keep the pirate ship afloat.
Keep the pirate ship afloat. And he is, as we talked about, probably the largest podcast today. Mm-hmm. Adam has done a fine job of taking a terrestrial radio program. Mm-hmm. I mean, when he left CBS, he didn't leave CBS. He was dismissed.
Right, ushered out.
He was ushered out. They said, we're no longer going to carry your show on our radio station with CBS. And he said, well, I like doing radio. I'm a funny guy. I'm just going to go do it online. And so he started doing that. Mm-hmm. The next thing you know, he's got people, and definitive people, who download his show every day to the tunes of hundreds of thousands.
Right.
I mean, he has well over 1 million downloads a week. And we're talking about people who not just might be listening, but literally go reach out to his website or through iTunes or whatever and download his show because they want his content.
And I think that's an important point. Donald, you might speak to a little bit to that. We have seen a loyalty base in this subscription model, or people who actually sign up to listen to something that might be a little bit, even a little bit stronger, or a lot stronger in many cases, than your local radio hosts or people where they just choose on the dial. So you've done a little bit of research lately on that, if you want to.
Yeah, and I think you'll see more of it. I think there is a generation of terrestrial radio talent that is looking to make that leap. They don't necessarily want to be ushered out the door the way others have been, but they understand that business model can work and does work, and there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot more ability for creative expression. And I just think we need to stay, as an agency, we need to stay ahead of that and say, where's our place in that? Where is the place for our clients to take advantage of what spoken word becomes on podcasts?
Sure, tying in what you said in the beginning, which was what we do is find our clients goods and services and find good talent to promote that and bring it to their audiences.
And that ultimately hasn't changed.
And that hasn't changed. It hasn't changed whether we're buying Heidi and Frank on a podcast, or Adam Carolla, or whether we're still buying, the local host here, Sarah Pepper, or whether we're buying, a Sean Hannity.
Right.
And I think that is consistent. So in all this discussion, where is radio then? Where does radio come? Are those considered radio? And I think that's a question that the industry is still trying to ask and answer, and not sure that it has, which is can be defined as radio? Is Spotify, is Pandora radio, or are they not?
Well, that's a very good question. I think, and I've challenged a lot of these larger broadcasters when I've met with some of their senior people to understand where we interpret the universe is, and we interpret where the broadcast universe is going. Because let's face it, Clear Channel, CBS, Cumulus, etc. are great. I'm going to use the word content because I think that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
They are great content delivers. They have some of the funniest people on radio. They have people who can pick the best music. They break the best artists. They have connections to these artists. Why not take that? Granted, you've got a business model that exists on the AM and FM dial, but why not expand on that in the online space, in what we're talking about? Create custom content just for online.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think.
Well, this was great. I'm so glad that you were here today.
Good. I'm glad to be
thanks.
here. Thank you.
We'll have you back.
Glad to do it.
Thank you,
Definitely.
Nostradamus.
And thank you again, and so glad that you joined us for another episode of the Laurel and Hayes Show, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.